Hi there. We are talking this week about something called methylation. And if you've seen any of my emails or my posts introducing this topic that's coming up, you'll see that I use things like what the MTHFR. And when I first saw this, it reminds me of a bad word. And I'm going to be honest, like I look at that, I'm like, that is a bad word. And you might actually want to think of it like that in terms of this. Can this be bad? Can it be a bad word for your health? Can it be something that affects your health? And so one of the things I want to start with is what in the heck is methylation? Because if we're talking about a defect in methylation, we should talk about what it does in the first place. So methylation is a way for you to clear things out of your system, things that you don't want backing up. So think of it very similar to like detoxification. It plays a big part in hormone clearance. So one of the things is as our body uses and breaks down hormones like estrogen and things like that, that's the big one, is they have to be cleared out. The metabolites or what they're called, as our body breaks them down and uses them, those metabolites have to be cleared out of our system, and that is done through a process called methylation. And one of the things that you see clinically in the with connection with the hormones and methylation is that when someone is a slow methylator, meaning that they have this genetic issue where some of their ability to methylate is slowed down or compromised, they actually don't metabolize hormones out as effectively. So things like estrogen can build up, and things like breast cancer, uterine, ovarian cancer, those are estrogen sensitive or estrogen driven cancers. So those risk profiles can go up in someone who is not as good of a methylator. So that's why this stuff matters. Um, it can also increase your needs if you're one of these people that has this genetic issue. It can also increase your need for B vitamins. But at the same time, there are certain formats of these B vitamins that aren't going to work for you. So let's talk about this. And I wanted to do this topic because there is a very sweet patient of mine who I saw in the office, and she started asking me a bunch of questions about this. She said, hey, my son just tested positive for this genetic variant, and this is what he's doing. And could it affect me? Well, of course it can, because you're his mother. You donated genes to his genetic profile. So, let's unpack this. First of all, when someone says, I have an MTHFR variant, or variation, defect, however they want to say that, what does that even mean? It means that they had a test done and they look at two genes that come together, and in a person, you donate, mom donates one set of genes and dad donates another. So in the case of MTHFR, there's two genes that we're looking at, and so there's four chances for this process to be broken down, if you will, or have a compromise or a mutation. And so up to close to 50% of the population has some level of a compromise. There's four chances for this to go wrong if you look at two genes and two chromosomes in each place. So, it can be anything from one of those genes is faulty to two of them are faulty, or all of them are faulty, or whatever the case might be. So there's levels of being affected by this. And when you run those tests clinically, at least the one I run, it'll say what this means is someone has a 25% reduction in their ability to methylate, or 50% reduction, or they're 65% compromised. So it grades that when you have that test. So I used to run this test on a lot of people in clinical practice because it seems like it would be really important to know. Over time, what I found is there's some indicators that I just put on more basic blood work that give me a lot of the same information and avoid that. The test is a little costly. And I want to circle back around and say in one case why I think you should have that test. But in a lot of cases, when I run the blood work, I can look at enough indicators and go, hey, I think maybe that's an issue for you. We need to get you some good B vitamins, and we need to make sure they're in a form you can use. So let's talk about this. So what happens if you are someone who has this compromise? And remember, up to 50% of us have some level of compromise. I have some level of compromise. My husband has it. My kids have. We all have some level of compromise. So what that means for us is that we have an increased need for good folate, B12, those B vitamins, but we also need to make sure we're taking them in what's called a methylated form. And that just means they're kind of pre-broken down into a form our body can use. And unfortunately, that's the more expensive form, but it's also the good form of the vitamins that you want, because it's the cheap form. And with folate, that's the big one. The cheap form is something called folic acid. And you've probably heard all the time, like, oh, you need to be taking folic acid, especially if you're a woman and you're in those childbearing years, where they say, make sure if you're thinking about taking getting pregnant, you're going to want to take 800 milligrams a day of folic acid. And really what you need, the nutrient you need, is folate. So it's not so much that you need folic acid, it's that you need the nutrient folate. Unfortunately, that folic acid, for anybody who has that genetic mutation, that MTHFR variant, they're not going to be able to break down and metabolize folic acid. And what happens when they do is that turns into something called homocysteine, which is a nasty inflammatory chemical that has risk factors for other things. And you don't want that to be elevated. That not only creates inflammation in your body, but can do some other nasty things. So that's why you don't want to take folic acid. I even feel like nobody should be taking that form of folate. It's cheap, synthetic. Is there a better form? I think there's a better form, and I think everybody should take the better form. It'll cost you a little bit more, but at the end of the day, I feel like that's something that's worth investing the extra money in, taking a good brand of that. So that's kind of the why behind it. Let me talk about when you might want to actually test for this genetic variant. Is if one of those genes on there is more significant than the other. So there's two genes that we look at with MTHFR, and the one of them is, if you have a compromise there, it's a little bit clinically significant, but it doesn't usually cause too many problems. The other gene, if you have a defective, you've inherited a defect from your mom and your dad at that level, it's more significant. It causes more problems. And especially in the anxiety, depression, mental health world, I've seen a fair number of people come in, and they're really battling anxiety and depression and mental health issues. And one of the things that can be contributing to that is that double mutation at that C677T gene of when you look at MTHFR. And in their case, they're going to benefit from using a supplement called SAMe. It's what is termed a methyl donor. So if you have a methylation defect, you're a little bit slower on that, you're not doing it as well, you can actually take a supplement that comes in and says, let me help speed that up and improve that process of methylation. It's a methyl donor. It's called SAMe. It's a great supplement, but it's really expensive. So, a good brand of that and source of that is going to run $80 a month or something like that for just that supplement. And so I feel like if you have that compromise at that gene, it makes sense for you to invest that money, because it really does make a difference. I've seen this, and it can be really powerful and really helpful. But if you don't have that level of compromise genetically, just getting those methylated B vitamins is quite often clinically enough to do the job. And that is a lot more cost effective in the long run is using those instead of both those and the SAMe. So, if it costs $150 to $200 to have a MTHFR test done, but you end up going, okay, I just saved myself $80 a month on SAMe supplements, then I feel like it's worth it. But the other side is true too. If you find out, hey, I do have this really significant level of compromise and I could benefit from that, then I know, at least I know that I'm spending my money wisely. So that's one thing. So I had someone in my office today, and we were going over her health history, and she showed me a list of folic supplements and what was in them, and she said, should I take these? And there was two of them that I looked at, I clued in right away, and they both said folic acid were their ingredients. And so one of the things that I recommend to everyone I see is switch your supplements from folic acid to a methylated form of folate, so that when you read the ingredients, if you see folic acid, I say avoid it and get something that contains tetramethylhydrofolate or something where it says methylfolate, or there's different companies, different brands have different ways to say that, but they'll always have the word methyl in there. And the one that I really like is, it's called MitoCore, and it's a company called Orthomolecular makes it, and it's a good energy support multivitamin type of thing, and it has a really nice amount of methylated B vitamins. All the B vitamins are methylated, and that's the one I take myself. I have a lot of people taking this stuff. If you are seeing this and you're taking MitoCore, leave a comment and say that you love it if you do, because I think it's good stuff. So you can check out in the link bio. I have a dispensary link for my Full Script account. That's how I do supplements, because I'm busy trying to be a doctor. It's hard to have all these supplements, but it's a really easy way for me to connect you guys with things that I really like in practice. So check out that MitoCore if you want a good methylated form of folate. And just, if you're looking at, that's one easy tweak you can make, is switch to a methylated form of the B vitamins. Because one thing that can happen is, a lot of people, they're tired, and what they hear is, oh, if you're tired, you need a good B vitamin. So they go out and they run and they get a B complex or a multivitamin with B's in it, and it has folic acid, because that's what most manufacturers are putting in there because it's cheap. But and then they start taking it and they end up feeling worse. And if that's happening, it's usually because they have some level of this genetic MTHFR issue. And what they're doing is, they're not able to break down the folic acid, and it backs up. And what it backs up and converts to is something called homocysteine. If you have ever heard of that, it's a nasty inflammatory chemical. So you don't want that backing up. And then they end up feeling like they hurt and they're inflamed. And there was actually one woman that I know that they told her she had rheumatoid arthritis because of this. She was tired, and she had that double mutation that we talked about at the C667T chromosome, and so she started taking B vitamins, all these energy supports, and she ended up feeling worse. And then she finally connected with a doctor that tested her for this and was like, no, you shouldn't be taking all that. Put her on a methylated B vitamin, and I believe some SAMe too. She wasn't my patient, but we had a conversation about that. And so that's how important this kind of stuff, what it can do. She was they were ready to put her on all these immunosuppressive drugs and go down prednisone and all these awful things. And what she really needed was someone to go, wait a second, don't take folic acid, and get a little SAMe, and you're good to go. So I feel like these are really good conversations. Where else is folic acid found? It is found in foods that are enriched and fortified. So if you read an ingredient label and it says enriched wheat or however they say that, fortified, enriched. I don't feel richer or fortified when I eat these processed foods, and you probably don't either. But um, if you look in the parentheses, it'll say like riboflavin, niacin, folic acid. So what they do is when they process wheat, they strip off all the bran, all the good stuff where all the nutrients are, and then they bleach them and brominate them and do all kinds of things to them. And then they add a whole bunch of fake synthetic vitamins back in there to enrich and fortify them. And one of the things that they add to a lot of these things is folic acid. So if you do have this genetic variant, or even if you don't, you shouldn't be eating this enriched and fortified, crappy processed food. But that explains why diet is a big piece of this puzzle too, and how you'll feel better. How and okay, here's another good question. How do you get good levels of folate in your diet? Because folate is a nutrient that we should be getting a lot of in our diet. So leafy greens are really good. Beets are another good way to do this. So eat those kinds of good healthy foods and stay away from the processed, enriched, and fortified grains. So hopefully that was enlightening and you learned something new about that. If you have any questions, I try to circle back and read the comments. So if you are watching after the fact and you want to leave a comment, I'll do my best to answer. If you have any questions for topics next week or in the future or things like that, leave a comment or post in the Q&A group. I want to create things that matter to people and give good information. I think these are conversations that we should be having around things we can do to be empowered and taking control. So yeah, if you want to connect on, if you have a question for me and you want to talk on what's called a discovery call, check out the link bio, or in the comments we put a link to that too, where I'll just give you a call if you're like, hey, do I have this MTHFR variant? What other nutrients am I low on? All these things we can run a set of labs. We can look at your health and help you get some good information so you can live your best life. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.